Welcome back to Yahoo Finance Live. An ugly day on Wall Street on what is a holiday shortened week here, with the Dow now down nearly 700 points, about 2% off here. The Nasdaq down more than 2%, and the S&P 500 down about 88 points. Certainly all the headlines we've seen around Omicron spooking investors. We've also seen some developments over in Washington that could be potentially moving the market to the downside here, with Senator Joe Manchin saying he can no longer support that Build Back Better Act. So a number of factors we're watching today. Energy markets also off significantly on the concerns around demand. Let's turn our attention to how some of these major companies, though, are coping with this latest surge. We've seen a number of those companies, including Apple and Google, delay their return to the office to potentially ride out this latest wave. But for small businesses, the challenges are even greater, many of them facing depleted funds, looking at yet another wave that could potentially lead to significant pullback in their business. Let's bring in Kevin Delaney, Charter co-founder and CEO. And Kevin, early on in the pandemic, a lot of these businesses were able to apply for those loans to at least get them through the next several months. How are things looking now, roughly 2 years on in the pandemic?
Yeah, so it's a rough patch for businesses generally, but for small businesses, including service businesses like restaurants and small stores, it is actually particularly rough. Some of the estimates from earlier this year were that 200,000 small businesses closed in the first phases of the business. So this is an area of the economy that's been particularly hard hit for obvious reasons. There's not the same buffer that a lot of bigger businesses have. And because a lot of these are services businesses that were the harder hit parts of the economy, there have been federal programs that have supported organizations or businesses like restaurants. But those funds from earlier in the pandemic are largely depleted. There are some sources of funds at the state and city level that could actually help people through this next phase. But also the White House has said that it's monitoring the situation and could try to mobilize additional funding if things are as bad as they could potentially be for small businesses with more closings now.
And we're expecting to hear from the president tomorrow on what's playing out right now, with the White House saying that, part of it will also be about assistance, as they say, for communities that are most in need. You talked about the additional funding, or the initial funding that was available. A lot of these funding programs are expiring at the end of the year. You look at the SBA loan, for example, that was implemented here early on in the days of COVID. What is the advice for some of these small businesses who are looking at year end saying we may be going through the same challenges all over again?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same situation. And in terms of advice, I think that there is the White House has signaled that they are actually watching the situation. There are these city and state funds that could potentially be released to support small businesses, but there's not a lot else to say other than to hang tight. The estimates are that the Omicron surge and obviously Delta is still out there too, could be peaking over the next 10 to 12 weeks. So the advice for small business owners would be to hang in there for the next 3 months or so, and then things should get better seasonally and as this surge passes in the spring. But that's obviously a lot easier said than done when you're running a small business with payroll and other expenses, and you're finding that your customers are staying away, you're having to close down your restaurant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of restaurants will say we don't have 3 months of funds here if we don't get any help. We'll be watching that one really closely. Kevin Delaney, Charter co-founder and CEO. Good to have you on today.